Good morning, everyone. Well, it's good morning for me. I wanted to jump on here and do a video on what influencers get wrong regarding OCD and anxiety, but specifically anxiety. And when I mean influencers, I mean people with very, very big followings, people who might have a lot of centers around the country, some of those which I went through myself, and they mean well. It is important to say they're doing the best that they can. But when someone hasn't had chronic anxiety and they haven't had obsessive compulsive disorder or PTSD, or they haven't had severe panic disorder or GAD, it's really difficult to understand the interworkings of those specific disorders. So people are just doing the best that they can. But it is important to say that most influencers are getting the information on anxiety dead wrong in many ways. So I think this will be a really good video to clear up some of the myths that we see surrounding anxiety and how to break those things down. Before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button down below. Let me know about some of your stories. Some of us have lots of great stories. I went to a center and spent thousands of dollars, again, very well-meaning individuals. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars for them to do a SPECT scan on me and for them to tell me that my prefrontal cortex wasn't working, and then gave me a bunch of supplements that said that would fix my anxiety, which obviously was all very, very bad practice and doesn't really work like that. And anxiety, chronic anxiety disorders cut right through that unless the belief is changed. I also was in the mental hospital, as many people know, where they told me the whole goal is to just get rid of my anxiety. I've also been to many different OCD therapists where half of them have never heard of sensory motor, just one of my main themes. I had to educate them, so I knew I was screwed with that. And I had other ones that were like, oh, well, maybe you have to spit into a cup for the rest of your life. And we all have these really funny stories, but we have to remember these people are helping it. They're not in an easy position. They're in the position of trying to help people of something they really don't understand at all because they've never experienced it. And there's many things in this life that people don't like to hear, where the emotional experience of going through something is more important than any other aspect of around it, academia or research or any of that stuff. It's like you could read all the books on childhood all you want, but you're not going to understand what it's like to raise twins until you have twins and raise them and try to be a working mom in the middle class. So it's just, you're not going to be able to read a book and get that. You have to actually experience that in most ways. And look up for that What's Up link down below. Direct message Phil right away, and we will get you in pronto. And that's very, very important. So, okay. So what are the number one things that influencers get wrong surrounding anxiety? What's the first thing they get wrong? Well, the first thing that they get wrong is they usually title videos with this: how to reduce or get rid of your anxiety. Already off the bat, horrible title. And the reason why the title is so bad, and I usually don't use those words horrible and terrible, but why that title is quite horrible for many OCD and anxiety sufferers, is because it already off the bat gives you the false premise that your goal is to get rid of your anxiety. That's a really, really big problem. Your goal, if your number one goal is to get rid of your anxiety, the chances of you actually getting better at accepting the anxiety being present is basically zero. Because you're going to be doing all these methods to get rid of your anxiety, and that's not going to work as a long-term solution. Because as we know, the most important thing about OCD and anxiety recovery, especially physical symptoms of anxiety, is changing your perspectives on the anxiety. So even if the anxiety stayed forever, even if you had all the stomach problems, the heart palpitations, the headaches, the blurry vision, if you had all that stuff and it never went away, you changing your perspectives on them would give you the best opportunity for them to come down. But if your number one goal is to get rid of these sensations, if your number one goal is to rid yourself of these sensations, the chances of you getting to that unconditional acceptance of life acceptance is almost zero, because you're always going to be watching like a hawk for when the symptoms are going to go. And then that becomes a very, very big problem. And then, so let's now dive into those titles of the video. So bad titles of videos, or horrible titles of videos for OCD sufferers: how to reduce anxiety, how to get rid of your OCD. Big problem right there. Remember, the goal is not to get rid of your OCD. It's a great part, but your goal is to make peace with your worst case scenario, even if you got stuck forever. Because remember, that's a key thing for us. The fear of being stuck forever and having symptoms be there for the remainder of your life. Sorry, I'm walking a little bit different of a route, and there's a lot of cars going by. So if this video, I might not walk this road again if the cars keep going at this loud. Anyway, so let's dive into the video. So the first thing that people usually talk about, these influencers, these world-renowned experts on anxiety, which, to be honest, are not really experts at all, because, again, they've never had it. Again, important, unconditional other acceptance, is that all the methods that they're giving you are things to do when you're anxious. So that automatically negates everything about wearing anxiety like an uncomfortable coat. So let's say you're doing meditation or breathing techniques or yoga techniques or anything like that when you're triggered. That's coming from the belief system of you have to ask yourself, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? What is the purpose of that? The purpose of that is to rid yourself of your anxiety. If you're coming at it from that angle, you're already going to be stuck because you're already setting yourself up for this, like, okay, I'm going to do this to make sure that my anxiety goes away. I'm going to do breathing techniques. Like, there's almost never a need to ever do breathing techniques. Now, we understand why people do them. They can be great for learning how to stay calm in stressful situations, but that's not why if most people I work with never had anxiety ever in their lives, they had no OCD, no anxiety, and I was like, hey, do you want to try meditation? They'd be like, fuck no. Like, no. This is the truth. No one wants to talk about this. Most people are going to meditation retreats, silence retreats, because they're looking for a sensation. They're desperately looking for something in their life that they don't have, or to make some of these sensations go away. So let's go to the tapping, like emotional tapping and breathing techniques. Let's talk about that one. This is something that most influencers get completely wrong. Number one, you have to stop all that stuff. If you're doing that, those techniques have to go. I've worked with many people who are quite defensive, understandably so, because they look at these things almost in a religious context. And they're like, no, this is part of my Zen and part of who I am. Well, it's not part of who you are, and you don't need it. There's nowhere in the universe that says you have to tap on your forehead, okay, that you have to tap on your forehead in order to make yourself become more accepting of your anxiety sensations. That's something that never happens. So that is one thing that most people have to look at, that's something that you really want to work on. Breathing techniques. Anytime you're doing a breathing technique in a triggered moment, has to go. I always tell people, try to go 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, no breathing techniques. See how it goes. Just drop all those things and see how you do. And that's a really, really important thing for people to try. So those breathing techniques will have to really go if they want the best opportunity for that, okay? The second thing is the dietary changes, including caffeine. So I see a lot of experts online, a lot of people that are really famous. A lot of you know the names of these individuals. Some of them are medical doctors. Some of them own clinics. Some of them are big YouTube gurus with podcasts. You see a lot of these people on Joe Rogan's podcasts talking about why dietary changes have significant effects on your OCD or your anxiety. They absolutely do not. They have no effect whatsoever in the way that people think. Sure, is it better to eat healthier and have a balanced life? Yes. But as an extreme chronic anxiety sufferer, I can tell you that your fears will cut right through your clean eating. They will cut right through your lack of caffeine. Most people are so black and white on caffeine right now that they're looking at caffeine like it's like heroin. People are like, I quit caffeine and I'm sober from caffeine. There's no such thing as being sober from caffeine. This is a new age term. You're either sober from crystal meth or you're not doing hard drugs or alcohol and or other addictions, but caffeine is not one of them. And then people go, well, caffeine's a drug, Nick. Yeah, you're right. It's classified as a drug, as a neurostimulant, but it doesn't mean that you're sober from it. I mean, this is where people, they really want to one-up other people. That's another thing with these things. They're wanting up other people. I'm better than you. I don't drink any caffeine. I'm better than you. I'm keto. I'm better than you. I do intermittent fasting. These are just very, very silly things when you break them down. Just ways that humans try to one-up other people. But I digress. These things do not have the effects on your belief systems like most people think. Again, you want to clean up your diet. You want to get yourself a little healthier, go to the gym. I mean, I was 50 pounds overweight than I am right now. And I had to highlight, hey, I'm fat. I'm a fat little shit right now. I don't like being fat. I want to change that. I can accept that I'm fat right now, but how do I change that? And that's how I went about that and breaking that down. Okay, the third thing is exercise. This is a big one because exercise will tie into the body image fears where people are thinking that changing the way they look and their body fears are going to have some sort of long-lasting effect on their self-esteem. But we know that's not true because the amount of, unfortunately, people ending their lives in the fitness world right now is at a rate that's never been seen before. So people are taking their own lives. People are they're really struggling with depression and anxiety and shame and guilt, all because of the belief that they must look a certain way in order to accept themselves. And that's the main thing that people are doing incorrectly when it comes to these particular fears. So we got to remember that if you're doing like these HIIT cardio sessions, or you're jumping on the ground and doing push-ups or doing anything like that, if you're having a hard day in running and going to the gym, running addictions are really, really bad. There's a lot of really, really unfortunate scenarios where people, I know someone individual personally that I know who it was very bad for their marriage because they were running 20, 30 miles a day. I mean, and they were a serious runner, and that's great. You're going to be a serious runner. It's great. But it's more than likely going to affect certain aspects of your relationship when you're doing it every time you have downtime, or you're doing it because you're stressed. Exercise can absolutely be taken too far. I hear stuff where people say there's no such thing as a healthy addiction. That's not true at all. Exercise can certainly be problematic for people's lives. So can being obsessed with certain types of eating patterns that you deem healthy. There's been really sad cases of people who have really hurt themselves because they went really overboard on some of these stuffs based off these fear patterns and stuff like that. So those are all the things I've talked about so far. The recap. You can eat whatever you want in balance. You don't have to cut sugars. You can have cake. You can drink caffeine. You can even overdrink caffeine. You might be a little bit more anxious, but you can break that down too. It's not the end of the world. You can exercise, but just don't go crazy. If you're exercising to get away from sensations, this is where things become a very big problem. And you have to be aware of that. And the meditation and yoga stuff, that's a really big one too. I don't see really any purpose in my life, particularly for meditation and yoga, since I use hiking as a form of meditation. But anytime I sat down and tried to meditate to my breath, when I really took a look at that and why I was doing that, it was almost always coming from that belief system of, I want to do this to make sure that I'm calm. I'm doing this to make sure I'm becoming Zen. And the reason behind that, it's like when I would ask myself, this was a really subtle one that happened to me a lot, is, hey buddy, I would start doing extra cardio. And when I asked myself, when I started doing extra cardio and I asked myself why I was doing it, and I actually sat down and I thought to myself, why did I add these extra 3 running sessions a week, or why did I do this? The reason almost always came back to, because I was afraid of being overweight and afraid of being fat. Because I hike on the weekends and that's enough for me. But anytime I did the gym cardio, it was always because I was like, I feel a little bit fat. My stomach feels a little bit like I have a little bit more like right here. I'll just add a couple sessions in. This is the same principle for yoga and meditation, because people will get in these meditation and yoga swings. And then when I ask them to not do meditation or yoga for a month, their reaction is very similar to when Rob asked me to not go to the gym for a month. I got very angry. Like, what do you mean don't go to the gym for a month? Are you crazy? That's so bad for you. The gym is a great habit. It's like, yeah, that's true, but it's just a month of your life. It's not the end of the world. And that was something that really, really, really messed me up. Because as Rob says, you really don't know how good your acceptance is until you're in a situation where you have to cut something out. And then it really gives you a good idea. And sometimes you can't find those situations. You have to a lot of times you just face those realities when they happen. So that's a really, really important thing to cover. So the moral of the story is everything that we talked about is all primarily what the influencers on social media will say about anxiety. And you got to look at a lot of the people that are talking about this stuff too. And I know this is something that many people don't like to hear. When I look at individuals that are talking about why it's so important to reduce your anxiety and why it's so important to reduce discomfort, I look at them and I ask myself, how good are these people at problem solving? How good are these people at handling the day-to-day minutia details of life, etc., and all that stuff? And usually the question tends to look like not so much. It's very easy to turn on a camera and just make some videos about like very, very, very superficial topics. But then again, when you look at people and you see like how they're handling, like how would that person handle a very stressful event? And this is all hearsay. And they probably might look at someone like myself and say, he might get really angry or something like that. And they might make a judgment call, because that's what humans do. Humans judge all the time. They're constantly judging people. This is something I ask myself, because usually the crowd that's telling you that your goal is to decrease your anxiety and make your anxiety go away, These are the same types of people that are usually like having extremely low frustration tolerance, to where they're like the 3-day work week, or they're saying that you always have to take time for yourself, and then that becomes a really big problem. So we cover this because the amount of people that come in on a daily basis and a weekly basis, I mean, sometimes we get 30, 40 new people in a couple weeks. And a lot of them are younger individuals, but not always. We had someone come in their 80s recently, and they'll say something along the lines of, I was watching something on this podcast and they were telling me this and that. I'm going to be very honest with you. I have hardly, if ever, seen any good information on anxiety in an overall unconditional self-life, other acceptance standpoint, and good things to do on social media. And I'm constantly watching this stuff so I can see how to negate and how to actually break down a lot of this stuff. I don't particularly enjoy doing this. It's something that I heard an individual say one time who does a lot of myth-busting videos in the exercise science space. He said, don't really enjoy doing myth-busting videos, but they're really good for the clientele because there's so much bad information out there. And that's just kind of what we have to do as part of the game. If you want to continue to push the boundaries on what actually works for unconditional self-life, other acceptance, and breaking down belief systems, you're going to have to become extremely comfortable in the scenario where you're kind of combating a lot of the unfortunate nonsense that we see on social media. And again, it's so easy to turn your camera on and be like, 5 reasons why you have adrenal fatigue, or 5 reasons why you can't have caffeine, or anything like that. But those things really just end up being really, really problematic things for most people. So you don't have to cut any of that stuff. You can enjoy basically everything you want in your life. That's amazing. This guy put this thing here, but he put like a rock on it. That's amazing. What's going on, man? That's so great. So that's the one thing you got to remember too. And again, a lot of these people a lot of them are medical doctors. A lot of them are psychologists, and a lot of them mean very, very well, but they're missing something, most of them, and they're missing the personal experience. And the personal experience in this field tends to be the most important, because when you have the personal experience and when you work with these type of people all day long, you become an absolute expert. And people don't want to admit that. And it's unfortunately what we see, and the amount of people that come in and we help. By the way, we work with a plethora of different psychologists and medical doctors. Like I say in many videos, I have lots of people that come in who are PhDs in psychology or masters, and they're social worker psychologists, and they have their own practices, and they're like, wow, these principles really help all my, I didn't learn any of this stuff in school. Why didn't I learn any of this? Because it goes to the root problem that takes away victimhood. That's why, you always want to look at it from like, what are my beliefs doing to cause me continual suffering? It's not anyone else's fault. It can't be anyone else's fault, because if it was someone else's fault for my anxiety, that means every person in that situation would have anxiety. And that can't be the case. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Remember, look for the WhatsApp link down below, or email Phil at OCDrecovery.com. And we hope to hear from you soon. And have a good one, everyone.